gentle marketers. Welcome to episode 47 of the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, the show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. As always, I'm Sarah Croce. I'm the host on this show, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a better way to market your business. Or you are an entrepreneur who's simply tired and sick of the traditional marketing model and are ready for a paradigm shift. Finally, you might also be what I call a marketing impact pioneer, someone who's working for an organization who does business for good. Today's solo episode falls under the P of pricing, and who says pricing also says money. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I structure this podcast and the conversations around the 7 Ps of the Gentle Marketing Mandala, and pricing is one of those Ps. So seeing my one-page Gentle Marketing Plan with the 7 email prompts might help you understand better what we're talking about here. You can get that at sarahsanacroce.com/one page, the number 1 page. So yes, we are talking about money today, and my guest is no other than my own money coach, whom I worked with last year. So let me tell you a bit more about Leisa. Leisa Peterson is on a mission to help 1 million people elevate their financial consciousness by realizing their true value and creating financial security for themselves. As a money coach, business consultant, and spiritual teacher, Leisa hosts the Mindful Millionaire podcast, as well as virtual workshops and life-transforming retreats. Her masterful blend of sound financial strategy and mindfulness training helps people break free of patterns of lack, scarcity, and money fears, allowing them to finally lead the rewarding, fulfilling, and abundant lives they most desire. On today's episode, we talk about her new book, The Mindful Millionaire. We also discuss the millionaire paradox, more about that in today's show. Leisa tells us her money story. We also address the difference between a scarcity and an abundance energy. And then at the end, we talk about this new age of millionaires. This is the first part of a 2-part episode, so make sure to be subscribed to the show in your favorite podcast app so you get notified this Sunday when the second part goes live. So without further ado, let's do this. Hi, Leisa. It's so good to talk to you, and we just kind of caught up offline. It's good to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I was thinking about how cool this is because this is how we actually met. The first time was through a podcast conversation.
That's so true. Yeah, exactly. So, Leisa, I have you on the Gentle Business Revolution podcast. And as you know, because you helped me or you were present in this whole process with the 7 Ps, remember? And so one of the Ps is about pricing. And so that's kind of where this conversation, I thought it would be a good fit, even though we're not going to talk about pricing, but it's also the P that has to do with money. And, you know, who says money story and healing and all of that. And I think that's where it was a good fit for this podcast. And I also think it'll help my listeners know that we have worked together actually, and I'm writing about that in the Gentle Marketing book. But I joined your Atlas community mastermind in late 2018, and then all of 2019, you really helped me with my money story. And, you know, it kind of started with the money story, and then it got into coaching and all kinds of deep inner work and stuff like that. And I even got to visit you in beautiful Sedona in August 2019. So yeah, needless to say that you have been a big part of my journey in a way, right?
Yeah, it's been such a beautiful thing to watch because I know that you are just becoming perhaps interested in different ways of thinking about business, but in all fairness, I think we're all doing the same thing at the same time, right? And so we're like, who else is having this conversation? And that probably brought us together.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, when I think back, it was your Art of Abundance Minds podcast that I was interested in and listened to, and then I connected with you, and the rest is history. But during all this time that we were working together and you were hosting your Atlas Mastermind, you were also writing, and that's why you're here today, because your book is ready. And as we're recording this, it will be already published. Sorry, as we're publishing this, so as this podcast goes live, it'll be already available on Amazon. And the book is called The Mindful Millionaire. So woohoo for that.
Woohoo! Only took 5 years, but better late than never.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey, right, to get there. And when you asked me if you could come on to my show to talk about the book, I told you that I admit that I hesitated, and I hesitated not because of you, but because of the book title. Because as you know about me, I don't like the word millionaire. I don't think the world needs more millionaires. But I also knew that your approach is not about creating more millionaires. And the book has actually little to do with becoming a millionaire in the old way of thinking of it. So I mentioned that to you, and you were fine with that. And you actually have a story, I think, that you can share with our listeners why this book is called The Mindful Millionaire, and how that came to be, and then I want you to obviously go more into the content of the book. But why don't you share the story about the title first?
Yeah, so books are great at waking us up to different ideas that we might not have been thinking about. And when I first finished the book back at the end of 2018 and sent it to my agent and the book proposal, she said to me the title, which at that time was I Prosper, which is the process inside of the book. She said, that's a terrible title. I want to put The Mindful Millionaire in as the title. They'll probably change it when, a book publisher decides to buy the rights, but is that okay with you? And I just kind of paused because I had never, ever, ever thought of that as the title. And she, she's very persistent. She's been an incredible partner and ally throughout like the past 3.5 years. She has a lot to do with the book even coming into creation. And I was like, okay, this business better than I do. If that's what you think will help, then sure. It doesn't really reference that at all in the book. And she's like, okay. So she put it there. The rights got bought by St. Martin's Press. They end up having these panel discussions of like, here's a book, there's a board of people that decide, is this a book that we want to bring into the Essentials imprint, which is a new imprint at the company. And they ended up loving the title and wanting to keep the title. So when they came back to me and we had our first meeting, they were very clear that it was a beautiful title because it would get people's attention. And even a few older members of the team said that, wow, this idea of mindfulness and money together, I get it. I get it from the title. We're excited. So then I had to go back and figure out how to bring this theme into the book. And thankfully, my editor was right on the same page with me. And we both agreed that while if you become a millionaire, someone who has a net worth of $1 million or more, that means you're a millionaire. But we both agreed too that that's all it means, that to become a mindful millionaire does not require you to have $1 million, but to feel like $1 million. And that this idea that you are the creator of the life you want to live, and whether you decide to set your sights on, saving $1 million, fantastic. I'll talk about that in the book, about things you can do or things you can think about or the habits that millionaires apply to their lives. But I went way beyond that with bringing this mindfulness and this spiritual journey into the discussion. And it turns out to be a bigger part of the discussion than the millionaire. Does that help?
Yeah, totally. And I think I can just confirm that I haven't read the new version of the book, but I've been kind of, you shared with us as you were writing the stories that went into the book, and I can totally testify that to me, that's why I was like, what's with this title? That's not what the book is about. It is really for me about the healing of your relationship to money. And if that gets you to $1 million, great. But that's not the end goal, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, in the US, I will kind of say something about money and, that just gives maybe even you a different perspective. In 1950, $100,000 today was $1 million in 1950. And by 1970, $500,000 in today's money was $1 million in 1970. And so we do have some stigma about the idea of what it means to be a millionaire in this country. And I do encourage people to look outside of the belief systems that tell them that it's outside of their reach, that it's impossible. Or also, when you add your home price, in the net, like a lot of people, when you retire in this country, because we don't have great safety nets, we don't have pensions anymore for most people. You think of, let's say you have a home that's worth $400,000 and you want that to be paid off. So you're not paying a mortgage when you retire, for example.
Right.
And then you start thinking, well, if somebody saved in a 401k for several years, maybe they've saved up several $100,000. I mean, we're including all of it. And to live comfortably in retirement in this country, it is important that you do focus on this financial discussion.
Oh, totally. And I think that's why it's so beautiful that you bring in this mindfulness, because I think especially, when I think of the US and as you know, I've lived there for 4 years, but I also have a lot of clients and contacts there. It is true that there is no safety net. And so you are the one who needs to somehow take care of yourself. I mean, there is some kind of safety net, but it's just not enough to really say, okay, I'm going to be taken care of. And so this idea of the mindfulness to actually work on, your security and how you feel. And we'll get to that in the bonus episode in the second part, that, where you work with the chakras and the meditations. So that's what really makes this book so different and your approach so different. You talk about the millionaire paradox. I'd like you to kind of tell us what that means to you.
So paradoxes, you think something is going to be one way and it turns out to be another. And I think even this idea of $1 million, we'll just use that for an example. There is an idea for many people that if you had $1 million or, you won lottery, for example, because we have lottery in the United States, a lot of people play it. But you think, if I have $1 million, then my life is going to be easy. Everything's going to work out my way. Everything's going to be wonderful. And the paradox that I personally experienced, because I, came from nothing, decided that money would solve all my problems. Like, I made that decision for myself that took me down a certain path that I have a lot of regrets about later in life, because I sacrificed a lot of joy in life and I sacrificed relationships in pursuit of money. But what the paradox is saying is that we think it's going to be one thing, but if you have not looked inside of any potential wounding, that you may not even be totally understanding of what's going on underneath you, which was, again, my story. There was a lot of wounding and trauma underneath my desire to make money. Then what you get when you get that money is not really any different than what you had before. You're still dealing with the inner demons, and there's a strong chance that you go about even self-sabotaging or not really, using the money in a way that doesn't help the world become a better place. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this with like lottery winners where they get a big windfall and then it's gone and they're in deeper debt than before the lottery happened for them. Or celebrities like Johnny Depp being one of them, hundreds of millions of dollars made and then like nothing to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or even professional ball players. Like, I think that what I found is that money is a tool when we come to the other side of these sort of inner challenges that we haven't faced, and that it's a lot better if we could just look at those things now, because what I've seen in my life is when we have greater understanding of ourselves and that the past that is not been released and cleared, or understood, at least seen, then we go about creating a business or creating a life that doesn't actually bring us the happiness that we're wanting.
Right. So basically the millionaire paradox is money doesn't make you happy unless you first work on whatever, inner blockages you have, and that you're actually able to receive the money and feel good about it, and then also share it with others. Because I think, what's the point of having all this money and, like you said, it hurts some relationships, and so what if you have all this money but no more friends or no more no more partners? So is that right? Is that along the lines of what you're saying?
You said it beautifully. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So take us into your money story. I've shared mine in bits and pieces on this podcast. I'm talking all about it. I feel like I'm always talking about it in the book and here, and yeah, it really does. It's all these beliefs that you kind of build up over time, and what I learned from you is that these are beliefs that were true for us at a certain time in our lives, and they even helped us, they protected us, but they are not necessarily true anymore, and so they actually start to hurt you. So take us into your money story.
Yeah, I came from a home where my parents did not teach me the right ways to save money, spend wisely. I would say instead they taught me how to get in debt and struggle financially, because that's what was going on when I was growing up. And so I had a story in my head that if you didn't change, that behavior, so sometimes we become just like our parents. Other times we become the exact opposite. So I wanted to become the exact opposite of what I saw with my parents. I wanted to be able to be good with money. And I just started really early focusing on it. So the story was, if I can change my behaviors and not be like them, I will have money and then I will be happy, because they weren't happy growing up. So I made a story in my head that that's all that mattered. And it's interesting too, though, because I think I was torn. There's a part of me, I'm a super creative human being. I always have been. I think out of the box. I love questioning assumptions, and I've always done that. And when I went to college the first time around for undergrad, I still had a spark inside of me that said, you could still have a lot of money and be a fashion designer. So go study this creativity and design and go have fun with it. And so I did that for 4 years. And then I got out of school, and the job I got, I actually was making less than I had in college. I was making like minimum wage for a clothing designer in San Francisco as an assistant designer. And, I had to get a job cocktailing in the evenings at a really smoky bar, and it was miserable. And I thought, this life is actually harder than even what I think my parents did. Like, I don't think I'm in it. And in the course of that 1 year, I realized I needed to go back to school and actually change the direction of my career and go into finance, because I was like, well, I think financial people make money and, and I'm going to go do that. And there was a bit of like selling. I really do feel like that's when I made these decisions of like selling myself almost to the devil. Like I'll do whatever it takes to have money. And that began a whole new journey for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate because, as you know, for me, money wasn't an issue. We didn't have, much money, but we have enough. And the whole hippie upbringing was just like, money doesn't matter, as long, like money really wasn't the problem. However, I'm married to Tony, who has a very similar story as yours. And so I think when money is a problem growing up, you're right. Like if you grow up having little, then you almost want to do the opposite and make sure that you are going to be okay, and that will never be a problem in your marriage with your kids. You want to offer them whatever they want, and so these are the money stories, and there's different variations, of course, of money stories, but these are all these beliefs that we grow up with. For me, it was kind of this idea of being humble. And my dad had, he was very politically engaged for the working class. And so that's my money story. What held me back is from making money is because I felt like, how could I betray my parents' beliefs and values? And it's just fascinating how deep these things go, right?
So deep. And many times very unconscious. Like I can talk about these things and you can talk about these things because we've reflected upon them, but we're in the moment and we're so led by the unconscious that we make decisions. And I think even when we're making them, there's a part of us, and I'm just laughing about, I've never said that before, like I sold myself out because it sounds terrible. But like now in reflection, that's kind of what it looks like. But at the time, I was like, I'm on top of the world. Like this is the right way to do life. Like you're getting your act together and you're doing what you need to be doing, and you're letting your desire for creativity, go, because like I felt like that was a mature decision rather than a childish decision. Isn't that funny?
It is, but what I also talk about is the definition of success, and we're being sold a mainstream definition of success, and that has to do with money. You made it. Basically, what we're told is that you made it. You're a success if you made lots of money, if you have a house, if you have a great job, if you have a car. Those are the things that we see everywhere. It's in commercials, it's in books, it's everywhere. That's what success is. And so it's no wonder that we all grow up thinking that's where we're headed. It's not our fault.
It's true. I would read these books in high school by these authors like Judy Collins or the sister of Judy Collins. I can't even remember her name. And these were like trashy novels, but they were an escape for me. They were like books like Scruples, where these people were not good people, and the things that they did were not good in what they needed to go about to reach success. But I was soaking it up. And I remember thinking, this is how you do it. Like, this is how you get ahead. And oh my gosh, thank goodness those have fallen out of favor because at the time they really gave me exactly what you're saying. Like they gave me a very skewed idea that you had to be ruthless in order to make money, and that people would do horrible things to each other just in the pursuit of power. And I think I did believe it at some level that that's the only way that you could get ahead in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We're releasing this episode and the bonus episode this Sunday in the middle of this summer series I'm hosting together with Penny Pierce, who's a clairvoyant empath and author. And in this series, we're looking at the 7 P's of marketing and comparing the old perception, so the left brain oriented perception versus the new perception, which is more right brain oriented. And so if you would talk about becoming a millionaire, how would you describe these two perceptions? Like the what's the old way of becoming a millionaire and what's the new way of becoming or feeling like a millionaire?
Well, I think I have to set a little bit of a tone. I am explaining sort of my skewed story and how that played into my pathway. But I do also want to just mention there's a book that was very transformational for me in the mid 90s called The Millionaire Next Door. And it was all about demystifying the idea of who really are millionaires. Like, what do they really look like? And to be clear, they're very conservative. They drive old cars. They buy homes that are much less expensive than you'd think. Like, the true millionaire looks very different than I think popular perception. And I just wanted to mention that because I didn't know that fully when I think I made the desire to go out and build it. But what did help me and what helped my husband, and I think that the way that we acquired our wealth is helpful, and people I think are often interested in it. We ended up deciding, or I decided, I think in the mid 90s, I'd like to be a millionaire within the next 10 years. And I started researching, what would that look like, and learning how to save money and learning how to invest in projects and learning how to get financing, and we did it through real estate. We were able to start buying rundown real estate properties or building brand new in a time when home prices were going up pretty fast. So that was ultimately what we did to create our wealth. But I think that there's another question in here. So maybe you can help me kind of see what would be most helpful.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on this paradigm shift that I'm talking about. And I know that you're aware of that too, because you talk about this idea of the mindful millionaire. Mm-hmm. So in a way, the question is, what's different about a millionaire today compared to the millionaire, maybe 10, 15 years ago? Like, what makes a millionaire mindful? And does the millionaire necessarily only create wealth for himself? Or, like you said before, there's certain personalities that do that. They, have all this wealth and yet nothing to show for. So in my perception, what I think will change is that, wealth will be created, but it's no longer just about the me. It's going to be creation of wealth, and we're all in this together. And somehow it's easier for me to create money. So let me see what I can create with this money that actually helps the planet. So those are kind of the thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you think.
Okay, so I think it's helpful to mention that underneath all of this work and the journey of even the Mindful Millionaire book is going from a place of thinking that we are not enough and there is not enough to go around, and moving into a place of I am enough and there is abundance in the world. Now, that doesn't mean it's an invitation to go exploit the resources on the planet. I want to be really crystal clear, because that is what has been done. Mm-hmm. So maybe the contrast is that when we're operating from a place of deficiency and the way we think about ourselves, we end up creating more of that in the world. So, making it really specific to even business, right? So when we go out and let's say we've got a new product and we're offering that product into the world, and all we're thinking about is how much money we're going to make from it and how we'll do whatever it takes to sell that product. And that would be the way of the past. Mm-hmm. Like, that would be the way that I think a lot of people operated, in myself included, that you just do the end justifies the means, right, versus focusing on what might be wrong with me? What might be wrong with the ways that I'm thinking about the world? And let me focus on that before I go out and try to sell people things, or, from a place of need and expectation and, unbridled desire that I'm not conscious of. And that's, this over consumption, for example. Like, I'm hoping that the quarantine really woke people up to the fact that we can actually be really happy with far less than we realized. And, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's like, well, what do you need all this stuff for? Exactly. Yeah.
And that the quality of our experiences, if those are really good, and especially our relationships with our family, if those are top drawer and we've really focused a lot of time and attention on building loving, unconditionally loving relationships, then that dynamic is so powerful in our lives. We look out and we're like, well, I don't really need a lot of this stuff. Or we even go one step further and we say, when I make that decision to buy that thing, there's this whole ripple of impact throughout the world that I need to think really deeply if this is necessary. Is this a good place for my money to go? Is this a good place for the planet? How is this thing created? Is it being created with like slave labor in Africa? Are there other ways that I can go about getting this thing if it is still important to me and there are problems with it? Like, let's become conscious of how we earn money, how we save it, where we invest it, how we spend it.
Yeah. It's so true. And it makes me think also of the millennial generation. You hear all the time that they're much less interested in money, actually, and they are more interested also in purpose and in quality of life and in health and all these things that matter just as much as the money. So they'd happily take a job that, has a lower pay if they're also, really contributing to this company and to the purpose of the company. So it's a both and. Yes, of course, they still want to make good money, but it's both. So it's not just about the money.
It's so beautiful that we have young people focused on that. I mean, I heard somebody that we know, Jenny, recently say that one of her kids said, when your generation is gone, we're not going to have a lot of these problems that we have in the world. Like, it's that there have been a lot of folks that thought they were doing the right thing, maybe, but in these times, there's a realization that we've been making a lot of choices that haven't been good for the planet, for our own emotional health, right? That we've not done as good of a job as we could have.
Yeah, and maybe we can also say it wasn't our fault. It was, the circumstances and the stories of our parents that brought us to make the choices that we did. But like you said, I agree. It's so beautiful to see the young generation look at us and, give us these big eyes and think, what are you doing? Why are you working so hard? What's the point of it all?
Yes.
They will definitely become mindful millionaires.
Yeah.
It's been great. I think we're ready to wrap up this first part of this double episode. Please mention where people can go to find your book and your website and all of that. And then we'll be back with the second part.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, listeners. So if you're interested in learning more about the book, you just go to mindfulmillionairebook.com. And if you are interested in other things I'm up to, then wealthclinic.com. And you can find my podcasts and lots of free meditations and all kinds of good stuff there.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the meditations in the second episode, also the chakras and all of that. So make sure to tune back in on Sunday. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast because the second part won't be on my site. So you really need to be subscribed to get the notification. So see you soon. Thanks, Leisa, and we'll be back on Sunday. I hope you enjoyed this episode and we'll tune back in on Sunday for part 2. And if you share my worldview and love the content we talk about here, I'd love to hang out with you in the Gentle Business Circle. That's a safe zone to hang out with other gentle marketers and help each other build our business and grow our impact. When you join the circle, you get one life monthly Circle Q&A call with me and fellow gentle marketers. And if you can't make it live, you also can submit questions in advance and you get the replay. And as a bonus, you get the new mini course, Authentic and Fair Pricing, as well as other secret bonus episodes every now and then. These calls take place once per month, every second Wednesday of the month, and the next one is coming up on Wednesday, August 12th. There are different levels of support, starting out at only $7 per month. You can find out more at sarahsanacroce.com/circle, and I put that link also in the description of this episode. I hope you'll join me on this journey to a kinder marketing paradigm. Please invite your friends if you haven't already, and they can go over to thegentlebusinessrevolution.com where they can find a link to the podcast as well as a download of the manifesto with no opt-in, just an access to a beautiful PDF to see whether this message resonates with them. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Speak to you soon.